Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started here. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar tonight. My name is Emily Piantek. I'm the Energy Democracy Field Coordinator with Appalachian Voices, and I'm based in Blacksburg. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to be talking about some of the work that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks at the Virginia General Assembly. And now that it's crossover time, we'll be talking about bills that are crossing over to the opposite chamber and what we can expect over the next couple of weeks. So joining me tonight are my colleagues, Jessica, Peter, Robert, and Jen, and we'll be kind of tag teaming this presentation tonight as we each talk about some of the issue areas that we've been more engaged on. So let's see. So if you're not familiar with what we mean by crossover, so this is just the time during the General Assembly session when successful bills in one chamber cross over to the next. And so that happened today. And session ends on March 12th. And so crossover usually happens right in the middle of that time period. So February 15th is halfway through the session. Bills that passed in the committee and then passed on the House floor or on the Senate floor will now cross over to the opposite chamber, where they will have to be voted on again and then eventually signed by the governor to become law. So this is a time when your advocacy is still really important and needed. It's really important that some of the bills that have been successful in one chamber have your voice, letting delegates and senators know whether or not you support or oppose them when they cross over to the opposite chamber. So just like, at the start of session, it's still important for you to be reaching out to your legislator. You can make calls, make emails, make visits if you're in Richmond. When you do this, you want to make sure to be really specific about the bill that you're talking about, the stance that you would like them to take. So whether that's supporting the bill or opposing the bill. It's also really important to let them know that you're a constituent and that you live in their district and where, because they pay a lot more attention to their constituents than to other voices on these bills. And I know recently I was down at the Pocahontas building talking to a legislator about one of the bills that I had been working on, and they actually brought up the fact that they've been hearing about their constituents on it, and so we're more interested in having a conversation about that legislation than they would have been otherwise. So that just kind of brings home the point that it's important for you to say that if you do live in their district. I've included links here, and I'll share these at the end of tonight. There will be committee hearings on bills after they cross over, just as there were before crossover, and so you can sign up to watch those committee hearings or submit written comments or even speak if you would like. So again, yeah, I'll share those links afterwards. At this point, I'm going to hand things over to Peter Anderson to talk about some good news that we can kick off the night with here.
Well, thanks, Emily. I'm Peter Anderson. I'm the Virginia Policy Director here with Appalachian Voices, and I'm based in Charlottesville. And I think one of the big issues that we saw, and I think we can go to the next slide here, in the first half is the appointment of our new governor. It gets to appoint secretaries, and Governor Youngkin announced even before he was sworn in as governor that he wanted to choose Andrew Wheeler as his next Secretary of Natural Resources for Virginia. Well, if you haven't heard, Andrew Wheeler used to be the administrator of the United States EPA under the Trump administration. And what he did when he was there is he continued his work as a former coal industry lobbyist and sought to roll back lots of environmental protections that we had in place already at the federal level in order to do favors for his friends in the coal industry. So, Appalachian Voices and the entire Virginia environmental advocacy community does not think this is a good idea. And fortunately, the Senate has a chance in Virginia to weigh in on the governor's nominees for these high-level positions. And so far, we've been successful. So I know that our legislators, our senators in particular, have heard from you folks, writing to them and calling their offices. So it's been really effective. The message has been loud and clear. that Andrew Wheeler is wrong for this position based on his record of rolling back environmental protections at the federal level. So far, so good. The Senate has pulled Andrew Wheeler's name out of the resolution that confirms the governor's appointees. I don't think this is the last that we're going to hear of it. I think it's going to be a back and forth for the remainder of the session. But let's keep it up, folks, because we've done a great job of getting our message to the Senate so far, and they've been listening. And with that, I think I'm passing the mic quickly to Robert.
Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Robert Kell, the New Economy Program Manager based out of our Norton office. And I think if we could call this legislative cycle anything, it might be the year of GOB. There were so many bills introduced by different legislators in Southwest Virginia to do something with GOB, which is coal waste that has been just sort of haphazardly dumped here and there all over the region. There was an effort by both Delegate Wampler and Senator Hackworth to define coal waste or GOB as a renewable energy source. Immediately we came out and had a pretty good defense against that reasoning. As the slide indicates, this coal waste, burning it is actually very bad for the environment, very bad for air quality. Although there is some reason to think about the ways in which it should be cleaned up and the harms of leaving it unreclaimed. So we were able to put enough pressure on these two legislators to get them to redo their bills. And now we're really hopeful because the bills are now to study GOB and all the options for reclaiming it and the best ways to dispose of it. We're still trying to see the type of funding that would be attached to this to these bills so that they can actually be as useful in helping communities, one, determine where all of the GOB piles are, but two, what is the analysis of those piles. And we know that the bill will also highlight the need to burn some of the piles, but we're hopeful that this study now will allow us to have a lot more research to say burning is just one solution. Sometimes reclaiming it means leaving it alone, allowing it to be revegetated. So we're optimistic. We can go to the next slide. And like I said, more GOB, more GOB, more GOB. Delegate Wampler had another bill that would have created a tax credit to burn the coal waste at the Virginia City Hybrid Energy Center in St. Paul, Virginia. Luckily, he just laid that on the table for the year, which means it's dead for now. His reasoning was to let the study play out first and see what recommendations are made in that. So we have a feeling this bill will be coming back in the future, but for now it is dead. Our simple reasoning of opposing this bill was the plant is already burning GOB. It's burned almost 4 million tons of the coal waste, but without these tax credits. So giving it any, of our hard-earned tax money to just burn, to do the job that it's already doing didn't make a lot of sense. In addition to that, the federal bipartisan infrastructure bill has dramatically increased the amount of funding. It's 10 times the amount to 23 million to help clean up or reclaim different abandoned mine land features, including coal waste or GOB. So money is coming in that will help our communities best discern how to clean up or to reclaim these sites. Delegate Kilgore also had another GOB bill that would essentially say that burning GOB is in the public interest and that utilities like Dominion can seek to recover the cost of removing GOB from the sites and bringing it to the facility to burn. That bill will cross over and we are watching it. We're going to be ready to have conversations with folks in the Senate. We would like to see that bill killed and like I said previously, like to see the GOB study bills have a level of funding attached to them that would make them really productive. We can go to the next slide. Some good news and bad news for our shared solar work in Southwest Virginia. We had there were 3 bills, 2 that would expand it, the shared solar community solar program to the utilities in Southwest Virginia, and 1 bill that would have expanded it or create work around it for utility co-ops in the state. Those bills aren't advancing, and our House bill was gently laid on the table, which again means it's dead in the House. But in the Senate, we were able to combine the 2 bills, and now they are advancing as a bill to study the feasibility of expanding to the utilities in the region and to co-ops. And we know that we're going to use this as an opportunity to be at the table, talking about how consumers in these utilities want this program, how the program is beneficial for economic development for the Coalfield region. So we're excited to help the conversation continue and to see this as a moment that we can leverage in the future to actually have the program expanded to Southwest Virginia. Again, next slide. And then some exciting news of work that's been sort of positively progressing all session. We have 2 budget amendments, 1 in the House, 1 in the Senate. They're exactly the same. The House is carried by Delegate Hudson. The Senate budget amendment is carried by Senator Deeds. The amendment will create the Coalfield Community Development Program at the Department of Housing and Community Development. This will help localities in Southwest Virginia, planning districts in Southwest Virginia, be able to fully take advantage of federal and state funding that is coming down the pipe for coal-impacted communities. So this, and in addition, would create the Coalfield Interagency Task Force that would facilitate a whole of government conversation around how economic development in the coalfield should be taking shape and the different types of policies and investments needed. So these staffers through the program will be funded. They'll work both in our communities as capacity development specialists and in state government as like coalfield advocates, bringing together a really robust conversation. Virginia's budget process is not the most public at this point. We know that folks on the appropriation committees are having conversations with each other. So we've been elevating these budget amendments as best we can in those circles and hoping they're talking to each other. This past weekend, some of you may have seen, we had an action alert go out to key folks. That's still maybe in your inbox. If you haven't taken an opportunity to do that yet, you can still let folks on the appropriations committee know that not to leave the coalfields behind in this really important moment where there's a huge surplus of funding at the state level, that the region could really leverage this money and tap into unprecedented federal fundings coming to Appalachia and the region. So we're really excited. Again, the next steps for this will be to see if these budget amendments land in either or hopefully both of the budgets coming out of the bodies. And then there will be a conference committee made up of a few or 5 delegates, 5 senators who will meet and in private hash out the state's budget and then send that to the governor. So we have a little more wiggle room to keep advocating, but really, once we know who those conference committee members are, and if the budget amendments make it into the budget, we'll have a clear strategy of how to like amplify the deep desire to see this program to come to fruition for the community. And just to remind everyone, what we've asked for is a little under, a little more than $400,000, which is pretty much in line with the lost tax revenue that came from the coal tax credits, which were eliminated last year. So we see this as these budget amendments as a promise fulfilled for eliminating those tax credits. The next slide. And that's it for me on solar and GOB. I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Jess.
Thanks so much, Robert. I am unfortunately delivering some of the less happy news on many of the priorities that we focused on this session that were protective of the environment, communities across Virginia, or spoke to environmental justice concerns, were unfortunately not able to make it all the way through crossover. So wanted to highlight a couple of those related to water protection. We saw that Delegate Willett introduced 2 bills that would have improved the anti-degradation part of the code. The first, HB 393, would have required that economic and social demographics be part of the consideration at the time an applicant came to the DEQ and asked to discharge a pollutant into high quality water. And unfortunately, that bill was laid on the table by the subcommittee within the Agriculture Committee of the House. The bill that was kind of a counterpart to that also spoke to the same section of the code would have allowed that baseline data be submitted at the time an application came to the agency, and that baseline data about a water resource would have provided helpful information for the Department of Environmental Quality to consider what the impacts would be to that water body. So this was a common sense bill that is supposed to be part of the process, but was not and is not explicitly stated in the code. And so there unfortunately was, although there was some interest and lots of great questions about this legislation from both sides, both parties, it was unfortunately laid on the table in subcommittee. So Delegate Willett, we're very thankful to him for patroning those bills. And that is an issue that he is deeply concerned with. And I expect that we would see him to continue within the second half of session, pushing for water protection bills. The third one is dealing with the large scale mining of copper, zinc, and lead. This was a piece of legislation initially patroned by Delegate Simons, and through the course of the first half of session, it did gain a co-patron, Republican Delegate James Edmonds. And so this was a bill that would have taken a look at the existing regulations for copper, zinc, and lead within the Commonwealth. Those are mining practices which have not been done for many, many decades and have never been done on a scale as large as what the exploratory drilling companies have been kind of speaking about and looking for within communities in Virginia. We know that an exploratory drilling company has leased land in Buckingham, Campbell, and Pittsylvania counties in a search for potential gold, copper, zinc, and lead sites. And so this bill would have taken a look at those 3 metals and would have complemented the gold study from the previous session that is actually in process right now. It also would have asked for a pause on any permits of all 4 of those metals while that review was happening. But unfortunately, this was also laid on the table in the Rules Subcommittee. So we're appreciative to both patrons, and we know this is an issue that will continue to be something we need to keep eyes on, keep everybody engaged in, and is a continuing issue for Delegate Simons too. So thanks to everybody that weighed in on those water protection bills. And I'll pass it back to you, Emily.
Thanks, Jess. So I'm back with some more bad news as well, to provide an update about some of our utility accountability and consumer protection bills. And so we had 5 bills that we were following really closely. And so we really appreciate any actions that you all took to try to support these bills and see them passed. But each of these was either voted down in subcommittee or laid on the table or not even given a hearing. So we faced a pretty tough battle with our 5 utility accountability bills. This first one that was introduced by Delegate Ware and Hudson would have reformed the way that our large electric utilities set their rates. And so this resulted, or it came about because in Dominion Energy's 2021 triennial rate review, state utility regulators determined that even after the offsets related to customer debt and the offshore wind pilot project, the company's rates were more than $200 million above the cost of providing service to those customers. And so what this means is that Dominion Energy was overcharging its customers. Unfortunately, though, current law limited the ability of state regulators to return those overcharges to customers. And so this bill would have attempted to allow utility regulators to review utilities rates at any time, and then give the utility regulators the power and the authority to have the utilities return the overcharges to their customers. But unfortunately, that bill was defeated. And there was also a bill that would have banned campaign contributions from electric utilities. Appalachian Power and Dominion Energy are big funders of the Virginia legislature. And so we see this as a conflict of interest, especially when utility-friendly bills are passed, or bills that would have returned authority to utility regulators and taken it from the legislature, like Delegate Ware and Delegate Hudson's bill would have, are not passed. So unfortunately, those were not successful. We also had 2 bills that would have improved or updated current utility disconnection policies for non-payment. And so these bills came about after the moratorium on utility shutoffs expired. We were looking into the types of protections that customers who are struggling to pay their utility bills have in Virginia, and they're pretty limited. So Delegate Corey introduced a bill to protect medically vulnerable people from utility shutoffs. Currently, only customers of a very limited number and type of utility in Virginia are able to seek an exemption from shutoff for a medical condition. And the utilities who are required to offer this exemption, the policy that they're following is more than a decade old. And so we were trying to update this policy and also to apply it to all the utilities, all the water, gas, and electric utilities in Virginia, so that folks don't have to worry about the life or death situation of not having access to any of those services, particularly while they have a serious medical condition. And unfortunately, that bill will not move forward. We also had another bill that was introduced by Delegate Irene Shin, and this bill would have protected people from utility shutoffs during a public health crisis like a pandemic. So it would have established a 30-day moratorium on shutoffs following the declaration of any kind of public health crisis. And this resulted because, or this bill came about originally because when Governor Northam had issued an executive order saying that there was a state of emergency in Virginia, there was a lot of scrambling to try to figure out how utilities were going to respond. And ultimately, he had to issue a declaration to say that utilities could not shut people off. And then there was a lot of back and forth and negotiation and uncertainty. And so this would have set some standards for how utilities should approach the issue if anything like that were to happen again. And there were also other provisions to protect people from shutoffs during very hot and very cold weather and some other things. And unfortunately, that bill was laid on the table. That was a huge disappointment, but I think we're gonna, be back working on each of these issues next year. And then finally, we had a bill that would have sought to improve the transparency that Virginia's electric co-ops provide to their members. These utilities are more lightly regulated than Appalachian Power and Dominion Energy, for example, because they are member owned, but members of those electric utilities are not allowed to attend board meetings at most of our 13 co-ops. And so we see that as a serious issue when it comes to governance and transparency of those utilities. And so this bill would have required them to hold board meetings that are open to their members so that the members can provide the regulation that they are and oversight that they are supposed to be able to. But unfortunately, that bill was not even given a hearing. So we will be we'll be coming back hopefully next year with another attempt to do this. So with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Peter, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what we can expect for the next, I think it's 5 weeks of session, and the kinds of bills that we'll be following and needing your support on. And I do want to just note here that there will be time for Q&A at the end of tonight's event. So I think I see some notes in the chat, so we'll get to your questions. With that, Peter, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, gosh, Emily, I hope it's not 5 more weeks. You give me a heart attack. By my count, it's 3.5 more weeks. So I'm in Charlottesville today, heading back into Richmond this evening to be ready to go back tomorrow. And that's not counting the governor's veto session, which takes place in April. But anyways, so you've kind of gotten the summary of the first half, some successes, some challenges. A lot of the focus, besides that really great work on economic development in the coalfield region that Robert was telling you about, that we've still got the budget amendments going and some of those things. A lot of our focus is going to be on defeating the bad bills on defense, because there were a lot of those bills filed this session with the changing political dynamics and legislators with different priorities who are trying to undercut much of the clean energy and environmental progress that Virginia made over the past 2 years. So we can get a little bit more into the details on what we're still fighting on the next slide.
Sorry, can everyone still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see the
I don't know what-
slideshow.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. Thanks. You got the slide advanced. All right, great. So one of the big attacks on environmental protections that we've been trying to deal with so far is this issue with the citizen regulatory boards. And essentially there's 2 bills that are still alive at crossover, and they are moving to the opposite chamber. And they both, I know a lot of the folks on this webinar are probably familiar with our citizen boards and the process. They handle, environmental permits go to the Department of Environmental Quality. The DEQ works with a permit applicant and drafts a permit. And then if that permit is controversial, like say for Mountain Valley Pipeline or some other large controversial project, and there's a lot of public interest in the outcome of that permitting process, then and only then, under our current law, does the permit go before our citizen regulatory boards, which are there to provide another layer of oversight and sort of insulation against what I call regulatory capture of an agency. And unfortunately, some of the legislators have gotten it in their minds that having these citizen boards is a bad idea. They want all of the decision making to be done within the department with no input on permits from our citizen regulatory boards. And App Voices and many of our friends in the environmental community oppose that because citizen boards provide that extra level of transparency. It forces more public comment in public meetings, and for these decisions to be, the big controversial decisions to be made in the light of day, in public, in front of us, even when we disagree with the decisions of the citizen boards. And more often than not, the citizen boards listen to DEQ's recommendation, whether we agree with it or not. But we did see an example this past December where the citizen board did not agree with DEQ's recommendation, and they did reject a controversial air permit. And so unfortunately, I think these bills are a reaction to that one decision. And I think they're really poorly considered because, like I said, they remove one sort of extra layer of protection we have from regulatory capture. What I mean by regulatory capture is the permit applicant, the company, comes to DEQ and says, "Can you write me a permit?" And then they talk every day. They email back and forth. They call each other on the phone. How can we get this permit to comply with the laws of Virginia? And after working for months, the people at DEQ have put, hard work into drafting this permit. They don't want to see the permit be rejected. They want to see it be approved. That's why they were writing it. So we need that sort of third party independent voice of the citizen boards to take a step back and say, hey, this is a controversial project. Should we be approving a permit for this activity in the first place? And so that's, in my mind, the important role that citizen boards serve. And along with that comes extra public participation, which makes your all's voices heard by the decision maker, and the decision maker has to face you, the public, in making that decision. So I've rambled on and on about the importance of this, but unfortunately, we got two bad bills moving right now. And what we were able to do with the Senate Bill 657 from Senator Stewart, we were able to work with the patron and some other senators to put back into his bill some of the public participation process that would have been removed, but it still moves the decision-making authority on permits from the boards to the DEQ. So we still oppose the bill, even though it has improved a little bit. And so we're going to keep opposing these in the second half here. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the monster slide, a lot of words on it, but suffice it to say, this slide is representative of bills that are still alive that, and it's probably incomplete. There's probably other ones that we didn't have room for on this slide. Of a lot of bills that have been put in, as you can see, mostly on the House of Delegates side, that would do things to undermine, undercut, or fully repeal the Virginia Clean Economy Act, or Virginia's participation in the carbon reduction program, RGGI, which stands for Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. So Virginia passed laws 2 years ago, joining the Commonwealth to RGGI, and of course the Virginia Clean Economy Act, a behemoth bill. We didn't agree with everything in it, but we do agree that it did a lot of good for the Commonwealth and sort of sent the signal that Virginia's utilities are going to get to 100% clean energy by 2045, and sort of sent the signal to clean energy businesses that, hey, you should come to Virginia and build clean energy projects. So kind of, there's a lot of good in it, a lot of complicated issues in it, not a perfect bill. But what you've got on this slide are all of the attacks to take Virginia away from these clean energy policies that we passed 2 years ago. So I don't need to, I think we can share the slides around at the end. I don't want to necessarily get into all of these in great detail because we want to leave time for Q&A. But suffice it to say, you will see bills on here. Oops, thanks. Almost ready to switch slides. You see bills on here that like 1301 that would fully take Virginia out of the RGGI carbon reduction program completely. And then you see more nuanced attempts like the HB 892 just says, hey, there's one power plant that wants a cheaper cost of compliance with RGGI. They don't want to pay full price for emitting carbon. So give them an exemption. And it's those little things that if we allow those things to happen, then the program doesn't work, and we don't get our carbon emissions cut as quickly as possible. And we don't do it at lowest possible cost for you and I, the customers. All right, let's go to the next slide. This was a bill that we did not know was coming. We got surprised by this when session started this year. The House Bill 558 and Senate Bill 565 are what we call companion bills. It's the same text. And so they start a version in each chamber, in the House and the Senate, so that they sort of socialize it across both chambers, and they need to end up with the exact same language at the end of session so that there's no conflicting language. But what this policy would do is essentially create a program where natural gas utilities, so if you cook or heat with gas in your home, you've got a gas utility. A lot of us have municipal gas utilities. I know I do here in Charlottesville. But this is actually aimed at those gas utilities like Virginia Natural Gas and others that are private. They're regulated by the State Corporation Commission, and they are similar to Dominion and APCO on the electricity side, vertically integrated sort of private utilities. And what this bill would do would allow that type of private gas utility to build a lot of new pipes and gas processing facilities and pass those costs on to their captive residential and commercial customers. And the big concern here is this is being sold as an environmental bill. So the idea is capture leaking methane. Methane is the predominant, makes up most of what's in natural gas. The idea is to capture methane at sources where it is already being produced. So we see methane happens at the hog waste lagoons at a concentrated animal feeding operation. These are big, nasty factory farms. It's from the breakdown of hog waste. It also occurs at landfills, right? There's anaerobic digestion going on. Things are breaking down in a landfill. And so that creates methane that might otherwise go straight up from the landfill into the atmosphere, and that would be bad. So there is actually a need to capture methane that escapes from our farming facilities and from our landfills and other sources. However, the financial incentives in this bill are such that we think it provides an incentive to expand hog farms and landfills. And I know our friends in Cumberland County are fighting a new landfill from being put in there for environmental justice reasons. And so we don't want to be shipping more trash to Virginia to create more and larger landfills. We don't want to be expanding or creating more concentrated animal feeding operations in Virginia, because those facilities will get to be paid for their pollution. They will be paid by the gas utility to capture and take away in pipes their methane pollution. And then the gas company will get to, there's no financial risk to the gas company, because then they get to charge their captive customers for building those new pipes and taking away that methane pollution. So there is a problem that needs to be solved, capturing fugitive methane. But this bill, in our minds and in the minds of many other environmental organizations, incentivizes more production of methane. So that's why we're fighting it. And we hope that you will help us continue to fight it on the second half of session. But it's got a lot of momentum right now. Both bills passed. The O'Quinn bill passed the House, and the Survell bill passed the Senate already. So the fight continues. And Emily or Jessica, I think this is you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Peter. So as Emily spoke at the beginning of the event about your help is still absolutely needed for this second half of session to continue engaging your elected officials by email, by phone, in person if you are in Richmond. So I wanted to flag a couple of resources to help you during the second half. We keep all of our bills that we're focusing on listed on our website, which is appvoices.org/Virginia-legislature-2022 for those that are just listening in. But on that page, you can find the latest status of the bill, what our position on the bill is, and different ways to take action, including our action alerts, which help you submit a direct message to your elected official. And thanks so much, Emily, sharing that in the chat. So please take a look at that. It's updated frequently. And we are also happy to talk to you about individual bills. And so you've got our contact information there and some of the program focuses we have. So as Robert shared, he's working on solar and economic opportunities in Southwest Virginia, and can help get talking points to you and talk about bills to you that are related to those issues. I work on bills related to pipelines or water protection and then metals mining. And then Emily is working on bills with environmental justice and utility reform. So all of these issues are very important as we finish the second half of the session, and we are looking at bills we both support and oppose. So one way you can take action immediately, as soon as right now, we're going to put in the chat too an action alert that addresses some Senate bills that have made it over to the House, and you can encourage your delegate to oppose those bills. So we'll put that in the chat right now. And then I will hand it back to you, Emily.